Liam pressed his forehead against the cold glass window and watched 3 Draconids glide past the observation deck. Their scales caught the light from the nearby star, shimmering like liquid gold and copper. Most humans in the translation department stopped working whenever the dragon-like aliens flew by. But Liam kept his eyes down. He had learned years ago that staring made people ask questions. The communication device on his desk blinked with another urgent message. 17 species trying to negotiate a mining treaty, and every single one of them needed documents translated by end of shift. Liam sighed and pulled up the next file. Galactic politics never slowed down even for a moment. He had been working at Harmony's Edge station for 2 years now. It was the perfect job for someone who wanted to disappear into routine. Wake up, translate documents, eat synthesized meals, sleep, repeat. Nobody bothered him. Nobody knew his secret. That was exactly how he wanted things to stay. The first time Liam heard a Draconid speak, he was 4 years old. His parents had taken him to see the Earth's first diplomatic exchange with the aliens. Everyone wore translation earpieces that converted the dragon speech into human languages. But Liam heard something different. Underneath the mechanical voice from the translator, he heard the actual words. Not just words, but meanings, emotions, memories embedded in every syllable. The Draconid ambassador was talking about weather patterns, but Liam heard her loneliness, her worry about her children back home, her hope that humans would be good allies. He told his mother what he heard. She laughed and said he had a good imagination. When he insisted, describing feelings and thoughts the ambassador never spoke aloud, his parents grew concerned. They took him to doctors who ran tests. The doctors found nothing wrong. One suggested he was making up stories for attention. His father agreed. After that, Liam learned to keep quiet about what he heard whenever Draconid spoke. Growing up, he taught himself to pretend the translations were all he understood. In school, he studied linguistics and xenobiology like everyone else, never revealing that he already knew how Draconid grammar worked, how their tones shifted meaning, how their language was less about words and more about resonance. By the time he applied for the translation job at Harmony's Edge, he had become an expert at hiding in plain sight. A loud chime interrupted his thoughts. The station's announcement system activated with a crackle of static. All personnel report to Docking Bay 7. Elder Seereth of the Draconid High Council has arrived for the Unity ceremony. Attendance is mandatory for all diplomatic staff. Liam groaned. He hated public events. Too many people. Too many Draconids. Too much risk of someone noticing that he reacted to things before the translators finished speaking. But mandatory meant mandatory. He saved his work and headed toward the lifts. Docking Bay 7 was already crowded when he arrived. Hundreds of humans from various departments lined the walkways, while species from a dozen worlds gathered in designated areas. Security personnel stood at every entrance, their weapons powered down but visible. Everyone wanted to make a good impression on Elder Seereth. She was over 3,000 years old and had personally negotiated peace treaties that saved billions of lives. Liam squeezed into a spot near the back, behind a tall engineer from Earth's European sector. Perfect. He could see the ceremony but stay hidden in the crowd. The massive docking doors began to open, revealing the black void of space beyond. A sleek Draconid vessel glided through the atmospheric barrier. Its hull decorated with symbols that most humans thought were decorative, but Liam knew were actually poems about honor and duty. The ship landed with barely a sound. Its side panels opened and 6 Draconid guards emerged first. They were younger, maybe only 200 or 300 years old, their scales still bright and unmarked by age. They arranged themselves in a protective formation, and then Elder Seereth descended the ramp. She was enormous, even by Draconid standards. Her scales had faded to a deep bronze color that spoke of centuries under different suns. Scars marked her wings, each one probably a story from some ancient battle. Her eyes were the most striking feature, glowing with an inner light that seemed to look through people rather than at them. The human ambassador stepped forward with his translator held high. He began the formal greeting in English, which the device converted to Draconid. But Liam heard Seereth's actual response underneath the translator's mechanical voice. She was pleased but tired. The journey had been long, and she was worried about reports of unrest in the outer colonies. Everything was going smoothly until the explosion happened. The blast came from the ventilation shaft above the northern wall. Fire and smoke erupted across the docking bay as metal debris rained down on the crowd. People screamed and ran in every direction. The Draconid guards immediately surrounded Elder Sirath, their wings spread to shield her from danger. Human security drew weapons and tried to establish a perimeter, but chaos had already taken hold. Liam saw them before anyone else did, 3 figures in black armor dropping from the damaged shaft, their weapons charged and aimed directly at Elder Sirath. They were shouting something, but their voices were distorted by helmet speakers. Liam's body moved before his brain caught up with what was happening. "Sirath Kavresh Nim Talar," he screamed. The words came from somewhere deep in his chest, not his throat. Battle can't. The ancient Draconid warning language used in combat when every second mattered. He had never spoken it aloud before, only heard it in old recordings. But his mouth formed the sounds perfectly, his voice resonating with harmonics that no human vocal cords should produce. Elder Sirath's head snapped toward him instantly. Her eyes locked onto his face with an intensity that made his knees weak. One of her guards launched into the air and intercepted the attackers before they could fire. The other guards moved like liquid metal, disarming the terrorists in seconds. Station security finally caught up, surrounding the captured attackers and dragging them away. But Liam barely noticed any of that. He stood frozen, hand still raised from his shouted warning, while Elder Sirath stared at him across the burning docking bay. She moved through the crowd, her guards trying to keep pace. People stepped aside automatically when a 3,000-year-old dragon walked toward them. She stopped directly in front of Liam, so close he could feel the heat radiating from her scales. When she spoke, no translator could follow her words. She used a dialect so old that only fragments existed in academic databases, but Liam understood every single word as if she were speaking directly into his mind. "You carry the echo. After 10,000 years we thought all of you were gone." Liam's mouth went dry. Around them, confused humans were checking their translators, wondering why the devices had gone silent. Station administrators were already moving toward them, probably to ask what was happening. But in that moment, the entire galaxy seemed to narrow down to just Liam and the ancient Draconid elder who somehow knew his deepest secret. "I don't understand," Liam whispered. And he meant it. He had spent his whole life thinking he was just strange, maybe mentally ill, definitely alone. Now this elder was talking about echoes and others like him, and 10,000 years of history that nobody had ever mentioned. Sirath's expression softened, which was terrifying on a face designed for hunting and war. "Come with me, young one. We have much to discuss and very little time. The fact that you exist means everything is about to change." Security protocols demanded that Elder Sirath remain in the diplomatic wing for at least 12 hours after an attack. She ignored them completely and brought Liam to a private chamber deep in the station's oldest section. 2 of her guards stood outside the door, preventing anyone from entering or leaving. Inside, the room was bare except for a table and 2 chairs that looked comically small next to Sirath's massive form. She did not sit. Instead, she began pacing, her tail sweeping across the floor with each turn. Liam stood near the door, unsure if he was a guest or a prisoner. His hands would not stop shaking. In the space of 10 minutes, his quiet life had exploded into something he did not recognize. "Tell me everything," Sirath said, finally stopping her pacing. "When did it start? What exactly do you hear when we speak?" Liam swallowed hard. "I was 4. My parents took me to see the first Earth delegation. I heard your ambassador talking about weather, but I also heard what she was feeling, her loneliness, her hope, everything underneath the words. And since then, every Draconid I have ever encountered. I understand all of it, not just the language but the meaning behind it, the memories attached to certain phrases, the cultural context that does not translate into human speech." He looked down at his feet. "I thought I was broken. Doctors could not find anything wrong, so my family decided I was lying for attention. I learned to hide it." Sirath made a sound deep in her chest, something between a growl and a hum. "You are not broken, Liam. You are something we have not seen in thousands of years, something we believed was extinct." She moved closer, lowering her enormous head until her eyes were level with his. "Do you know what the architects were?" "The precursor race," Liam said automatically. "Every schoolchild learned about them. They built structures all over the galaxy millions of years ago, then disappeared. Nobody knows why. 50,000 years ago, not millions," Sirath corrected. "And we know more than most species. We know because the architects created us. The words hung in the air like physical objects. Liam's mind raced through everything he had learned about galactic history, trying to fit this new information into the existing framework. It did not fit. Nothing in the historical records suggested the Draconids were artificial. That is impossible. The Draconids evolved on your homeworld. There is fossil evidence, genetic records, everything points to natural evolution. All carefully maintained lies, Sirath said quietly. We could not let the truth be known. Too dangerous. Too many species would have questioned our authority if they knew we were created servants rather than naturally evolved masters. She turned away from him, gazing at the blank wall as if seeing through it to distant memories. The architects made us to be their companions and guardians. They gave us intelligence, strength, and something else. Something they called the echo. What is it? A harmonic resonance built into our consciousness. It allows us to sense others who carry the same pattern. When the architects walked among us, we could feel them, understand them, communicate in ways that went beyond simple language. Her tail twitched with agitation. When they vanished, that connection disappeared. We have been alone for 50,000 years, unable to find anyone else who carries the echo. Until today, until you screamed a warning in battle camp that no human should know. Liam's legs suddenly felt weak. He pulled out one of the small chairs and sat down before he fell down. You think I have this echo thing? That I am connected to the architects somehow? I do not think it. I know it. Every Draconid who has reached my age can sense the echo. It is faint in you, like hearing music through thick walls, but it is definitely there. She finally sat, curling her massive body into a position that looked uncomfortable in the small space. The question is how? Humans are a young species. Your planet only developed complex life after the architects were already gone. There should be no connection between you and them. Maybe it is genetic. Could they have visited Earth before they disappeared? Sirath's eyes brightened with something that might have been excitement. That is what we need to discover. But we cannot do it here. Station authorities will want explanations for what happened in the docking bay. They will want to study you, test you, turn you into a curiosity for scientists to examine. She leaned forward. I can offer you protection among my people. Come to our homeworld. Let our scholars examine your genetics, your neural patterns. Help us understand why you exist. And if I refuse?
Then you will spend the rest of your life hiding, always afraid that someone will discover your secret.
Or worse, you will be discovered anyway, and whoever finds you will not be as kind as I am. She tilted her head, studying him. I am offering you answers, Liam. Do you not want to know why you are different? He did. More than anything, he wanted to understand what had been wrong with him his entire life. But accepting Sirath's offer meant leaving everything behind. His job, his routine, the safe anonymity he had built so carefully. It also meant trusting a species he barely knew despite understanding their language. Before he could answer, an urgent pounding came from the door. One of Sirath's guards opened it slightly, speaking in rapid Draconid to someone outside. Liam heard the response and his blood went cold. Station security is demanding access, the guard said. They have orders to detain the human for questioning about unauthorized use of Draconid military communications. Tell them the human is under my personal protection as a witness to the attack, Sirath commanded. They have override codes from the council. They say you have no authority to harbor potential security risks. Sirath stood up so quickly that the sudden movement made Liam flinch. Her scales seemed to darken, and the temperature in the room rose noticeably. They dare to invoke council authority against an elder? Someone is very eager to separate us from this boy. She turned back to Liam and her expression was grim. The decision is out of your hands now. If they take you, you will disappear into some research facility and never emerge. I have seen it happen before. Come with me now, or lose your freedom forever. Liam thought about his small apartment, his carefully organized workspace, his weekly calls with his parents who barely tolerated his presence. What was he really giving up? A life spent hiding? Pretending to be less than he was? At least with Sirath he might find answers. He might find a place where being different was not a curse. How do we get out? They will have the docking bay surrounded. A fierce grin spread across Sirath's face, showing rows of teeth that could bite through steel. We do not use the docking bay. Follow me. She led him to a maintenance panel in the wall and tore it open with one claw. Behind it was a narrow service tunnel that looked barely wide enough for a human, let alone a dragon. But Sirath somehow folded her body in ways that should not have been possible. slipping into the darkness like water flowing through a crack. "Come," her voice echoed from inside. "My ship is docked at the emergency port. They will not think to check there until it is too late." Liam took one last look at the door, hearing the security codes being entered, hearing the override protocols engaging. Then he climbed into the tunnel after the ancient Draconid elder, leaving his old life behind with each step forward. The service tunnels were dark and cramped, filled with the hum of station machinery and the hiss of atmospheric processors. Sireth moved through them with surprising speed, her scales scraping against metal walls. Liam struggled to keep up, his lungs burning from the exertion. They emerged in a section of the station Liam had never seen before, an old docking port that looked abandoned except for Sirath's sleek vessel, waiting with its boarding ramp already extended. Her guards were nowhere in sight, probably still maintaining the illusion that they were in the secured room. "Get aboard," Sirath ordered. "We launch immediately." Liam ran up the ramp and barely made it inside before the ship's systems activated. The engines thrummed with power that vibrated through the floor. Through the nearest viewport, he saw station security finally arriving, weapons drawn and voices shouting demands to halt. But Sirath's ship was already moving, already breaking away from the station's docking clamps. Space opened up before them, vast and full of stars. The communication system crackled with angry human voices demanding they return, threatening consequences, invoking diplomatic incidents. Sirath ignored all of it. She set coordinates for her homeworld and engaged the faster-than-light drive. Reality twisted, colors stretched into impossible shapes, and then they were gone, leaving Harmony's Edge and Liam's old life behind in a blur of quantum probability. "Welcome to your new existence," Sirath said, her voice gentle despite everything that had just happened. "The galaxy is about to learn that humans are far more interesting than anyone suspected." Firaxis hung in space like a jewel made of fire and stone. The Draconid homeworld was nothing like Earth, with its violent volcanic activity creating rivers of lava that glowed against the dark rock. Massive crystalline structures rose from the surface, catching and reflecting light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Liam pressed his face against the viewport, trying to understand how anything could survive down there. "The crystals are not natural," Sirath explained, noticing his fascination. "The architects built them before they disappeared. We have maintained them for 50,000 years, but we still do not fully understand their purpose. They generate energy, regulate the planet's magnetic fields, and do 100 other things we have barely begun to catalog." The ship descended through thick clouds of ash and steam, instruments calculating safe paths through the turbulent atmosphere. When they finally broke through to clearer air, Liam saw cities clinging to mountainsides, structures that seemed to grow organically from the rock itself. Draconids flew between buildings in complex aerial traffic patterns, their scales gleaming in the orange light of the volcanic vents. They landed on a platform near the largest crystal structure, a tower that stretched so high its top disappeared into the clouds. Dozens of Draconids waited at the landing site, their scales bearing marks that indicated scholarly ranks. None of them looked friendly. "Elder Sirath brings a human to the sacred archives," one of them said, his tone making it clear what he thought of that decision. "The Council will not approve." "The Council does not need to approve," Sirath replied coldly. "I am still an elder, and this human carries the echo. That gives me authority to bring him wherever I deem necessary." Another scholar stepped forward, this one older with scales that had turned almost black with age. "The echo has been extinct for millennia." "You are mistaken, Sirath. This is just a human who learned our language through study. Test him yourself. Scholar Riven. Speak in the old tongue and see if his translator can keep up." Riven's eyes narrowed, but he accepted the challenge. He opened his mouth and sounds came out that made Liam's bones vibrate. The words were layered with harmonics that carried meaning and frequencies humans were not supposed to hear. His translator device made distressed chirping noises and then went silent, completely unable to process what it was receiving. But Liam understood every word. "You doubt the Elder's judgment, young scholar, but your doubt comes from fear rather than wisdom. You are afraid that everything you believe about the architects might be wrong." Riven stumbled backward as if struck. Several other scholars made sounds of shock. One of them dropped the tablet he was holding and it clattered against the stone platform. "Impossible," Riven whispered. "That dialect has been dead for 8,000 years. No recordings exist. How could a human possibly—" Because he carries the echo, Cyrath said firmly. Now, if you are finished with your skepticism, we have work to do. The human needs to be examined, his genetic structure analyzed, his neural patterns mapped. I want answers before the Galactic Council decides to make this a political disaster. The scholars reluctantly led them into the crystal tower. Inside, the structure was even more impressive than outside. Walls pulsed with soft light and strange symbols floated in the air, rearranging themselves in patterns that seemed almost alive. Liam realized they were not decorations but some kind of data display. Information stored in visual form that could be read and manipulated by those who understood the language. They brought him to a medical chamber where equipment that looked ancient and impossibly advanced at the same time waited. A female Draconid scholar named Iana oversaw the examination, her movements precise and clinical. She drew blood samples, took genetic scans, measured his brain activity while showing him different stimuli. Through it all, Liam tried not to think about what they might find. What if he was just a mutation, a random accident of genetics with no greater meaning? Hours passed before Iana finally reviewed the results. Her expression shifted from professional curiosity to shocked disbelief as she examined the data. She called Cyrath over, and they spoke in urgent whispers that Liam's echo translated automatically. The genetic markers are definitely there, Iana was saying. Sequences that match architect DNA samples recovered from ancient sites. But they are scattered throughout his genome, broken up and hidden among what humans call junk DNA. It is as if someone deliberately concealed them. Can you activate them? Cyrath asked. I would not recommend it. We do not know what would happen. These sequences might be dormant for good reason. But theoretically, could it be done? Yes. Exposure to architect technology sometimes triggers activation. The crystals, for example, emit frequencies that interact with echo carrier genetics. That is why we built our cities near them after the architects left. The resonance helped us maintain our connection to their legacy. Iana looked at Liam with something like pity. If this human spends enough time near the crystals, his dormant sequences will activate whether we want them to or not. Liam's stomach twisted. What happens when they activate? We do not know, Iana admitted. In Draconids, activation is natural, part of our development. But in a species not designed to carry the echo, the results could range from enhanced cognitive abilities to complete neural breakdown. That is not encouraging, Liam said quietly. Cyrath placed one massive claw on his shoulder, surprisingly gentle for something that could crush his bones. You wanted answers. Now you have them. Your species carries architect DNA hidden and dormant. Somehow your genetics activated enough to give you the echo, but the rest remains locked away. The question is what we do with this information. Before anyone could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the tower. Red light flooded the chamber, and emergency protocols activated. A younger scholar burst through the door, his scales pale with fear. Elder Cyrath, you need to see this. Now. They rushed to a command center where dozens of Draconids monitored communication feeds from across the galaxy. One of the main screens showed a news broadcast from Earth, and Liam's heart sank as he recognized the images being shown. His face was on every major network. His name, his history, his employment records, everything. The headline scrolling beneath declared, Human with alien DNA kidnapped by Draconid extremists. His parents were being interviewed, tears streaming down their faces as they begged for his safe return. The Earth government had issued formal demands for his return, threatening to withdraw from the Galactic Council if he was not released immediately. This is a disaster, Riven said unnecessarily. The humans think we abducted him. The Council will side with Earth to maintain political stability. They will demand we hand him over. Cyrath's expression hardened. No. The moment Earth gets him, their scientists will tear him apart trying to understand the architect connection. They will see him as a resource to be exploited, not a person to be protected. So what do we do? Liam asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I cannot go back to Earth, but staying here will cause a political crisis that could destroy the alliance between humans and Draconids. Iana stepped forward, her eyes bright with sudden realization. There might be another option. The genetic data shows that Liam is not unique. The architect sequences are present in all human DNA, just dormant. If we can prove that every human carries this potential, then Earth cannot claim Liam as their property. He becomes evidence of something much larger. How do we prove that? Cyrath demanded. We find more humans with active echo capabilities. They must exist. If Liam's genes activated naturally, others could have activated as well. They are probably hiding just as he was, afraid of being discovered. Iana pulled up a galactic map, highlighting Earth and its colonial settlements. We search for them. We find them before Earth's government does, and we show the galaxy that humans are not what everyone thought they were. Liam stared at the map, at the countless worlds where humans had spread across the stars, and felt a mixture of hope and terror. He was not alone. Somewhere out there, other humans were hearing what he heard, understanding what should be impossible to understand, but finding them meant exposing them to the same danger he now faced. If we do this, we put them all at risk, he said quietly. Earth will hunt them. Other species might see them as threats. And if we do nothing, you remain the only example, Sirath countered. A single anomaly that Earth can claim and control. At least if we find others, we can protect them together. Safety in numbers, as your people say. Liam closed his eyes and tried to think through the impossible situation. Every option led to danger. Every choice carried consequences he could not fully predict. But Sirath was right about one thing. Alone, he was vulnerable. Together, people with the Echo might have a chance. All right, he said finally. How do we find them? Iana smiled, an expression that looked predatory on a dragon face. We start by going to Earth, the planet where the architects hid their greatest secret, buried in the DNA of an entire species that did not even know it existed. The journey back to Earth took 3 days, and every one of them brought worse news. Reports flooded in from across human space showing rising tensions between species. Some alien governments accused the Draconids of attempting to weaponize humans through genetic manipulation. Others claimed that humans had always been architect agents, secretly working to undermine the Galactic Council from within. Conspiracy theories spread like wildfire, and riots broke out on mixed-species colonies where humans and aliens lived together. Liam watched the broadcasts with growing dread. His attempt to save one elder from terrorists had accidentally triggered something much bigger than himself. He had become the face of a galactic crisis he did not understand and could not control. Stop torturing yourself, Sirath said, finding him in the observation room for the 3rd time that day. This would have happened eventually. The truth about the architects and their connection to humanity was too big to stay hidden forever. You simply accelerated the timeline. People are getting hurt because of me, Liam replied, not taking his eyes off the screen showing a burned-out human settlement on a frontier world. They are losing their homes, their livelihoods. Some of them are dying. And thousands more will die if we do nothing. Fear grows in darkness, Liam. The only way to stop this is with light, with truth. We need to show the galaxy that humans with the Echo are not weapons or threats, but people who can help solve the greatest mystery in galactic history. Easier said than done, Liam thought, but did not say aloud. How could they convince billions of people across hundreds of worlds that humans were not dangerous when he himself did not know what the Echo would ultimately do to his species? They arrived at Earth orbit under heavy escort. The human defense fleet had surrounded them the moment they entered the solar system. Weapons locked but not yet fired. Tense negotiations between Sirath and Earth's government eventually resulted in permission to land, but only at an isolated research facility in what used to be northern Canada. No contact with civilian populations would be permitted. The facility was a sprawling complex of laboratories and living quarters built into the side of a mountain. Armed soldiers lined the landing area as their ship touched down. Scientists waited with scanning equipment, their faces showing a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. A government representative stood at the front of the welcoming committee, her expression cold and professional. Elder Sirath, Liam Chen, welcome to Earth, she said without warmth. I am Director Patricia Hill, and I will be overseeing your stay here. You are to consider yourselves guests under protective custody. Any attempt to leave the facility without authorization will be met with force. We are not prisoners, Sirath rumbled. You are not free either, Hill replied sharply. You kidnapped a human citizen and fled Galactic Council space. The only reason you are not in a detention cell right now is because we need to understand what has been done to Liam and how to reverse it. Nothing was done to me, Liam said, finding his voice. I have been like this my entire life. Ask my parents, ask my childhood doctors. The records will show that I reported hearing Draconid speech long before I ever left Earth. Hill's expression did not change. Those records will be reviewed. In the meantime, you will both submit to examinations and interviews. Full cooperation is expected. They were separated immediately. Soldiers escorted Liam to a medical wing, while Cyrath was taken to a secure holding area designed for large alien species. The medical wing reminded Liam uncomfortably of the examinations on Peraxis, except the humans were far less gentle. They drew blood samples, scraped cells from his mouth, scanned his brain activity, and asked endless questions about when his abilities first appeared and what exactly he could understand when Draconid spoke. One doctor, an older man named Dr. Rhodes, seemed genuinely interested rather than afraid. He spent hours comparing Liam's genetic sequences to baseline human samples, muttering to himself as patterns emerged in the data. "Remarkable," Rhodes said finally. "Director Hill is not going to like this, but the evidence is clear. Your genetic anomalies are not the result of alien experimentation. They are natural variations present in your DNA from birth, probably inherited from your parents." "My parents do not have the echo," Liam said. "No, but they carry dormant sequences that combined in you to create activation. It is similar to how two brown-eyed parents can have a blue-eyed child if they both carry recessive genes." Rhodes leaned back in his chair, looking tired. "The bigger question is where these sequences came from in the first place. The Draconids claim they are architect DNA, and the pattern matches do support that theory. But how did architect genetics end up in human evolution? Maybe they visited Earth before they disappeared," Liam suggested. "Iana, one of the Draconid scholars, thinks the architects hid their DNA in human ancestors deliberately." "A genetic time capsule," Rhodes mused. "Hide your legacy in a developing species and wait for evolution to bring it forward. It is brilliant if you think about it. Also terrifying. It means humanity has been carrying alien DNA for potentially millions of years without knowing it." Director Hill entered the room before Liam could respond, her expression even grimmer than before. She carried a tablet showing news feeds, and none of them looked good. "We have a situation," she announced. 3 more humans have come forward claiming they can understand Draconid speech. One is a teenager in Tokyo, another is a construction worker in New São Paulo, and the third is a retired teacher in Sydney. All of them have been hiding the ability for years, and all of them saw the news about you and decided to reveal themselves." "That is good news," Liam said. "It proves I am not alone, that this is a natural human variation." "It is a nightmare," Hill corrected sharply. "Those 3 humans are now being detained by their local governments for testing. Anti-alien groups are calling for their imprisonment or execution. Pro-alien groups are claiming they should be given special status as bridges between species, and several alien governments have formally requested that all humans with echo capabilities be registered with the Galactic Council as potential security risks." Rhodes set down his equipment. "You cannot possibly consider registering them. That would be discrimination based on genetic factors, which violates every human rights law we have." "I am not considering anything yet," Hill snapped. "But the pressure from other species is intense. If we do not do something to calm the situation, we risk losing Earth's seat on the Galactic Council entirely." Liam's mind raced. 3 more people with the echo, probably terrified and confused, now being treated as threats because of his actions. How many others were out there still hiding, now more afraid than ever to reveal themselves? "What if we could show them it is not dangerous?" he asked suddenly. "What if we could prove that humans with the echo are not threats but assets? People who can help bridge the gaps between species? How exactly do you propose we do that?" Hill demanded. "Let me talk to them, the other 3 who came forward. Let me show them they are not alone and help them understand what the echo means. Then we present them to the Galactic Council together, not as dangerous anomalies, but as proof that humanity is evolving into something greater." Hill studied him for a long moment. "That would require bringing them here to this facility, putting all the known echo carriers in one location. If something went wrong, if there was an attack or an accident, we would lose all of you at once. Or we would protect all of us at once," Liam countered. "Scattered and isolated, we are vulnerable. Together, we are stronger, and maybe together we can figure out what the architects wanted humanity to become." Rhodes nodded slowly. "The boy has a point. Genetic activation is still occurring. There will be more echo carriers appearing as time goes on. We need to establish protocols for identifying and supporting them, not treating them as criminals or freaks." Hill was silent for several seconds, clearly weighing political considerations against practical ones. Finally, she pulled out her communication device and began typing orders. I will arrange for the 3 confirmed cases to be transported here under maximum security. You will have 1 week to work with them, to demonstrate that echo carriers can be integrated safely into human society. If you succeed, I will advocate for protection status with the government. If you fail, we will have no choice but to implement registration and monitoring protocols. What about Sirath? Liam asked. I will need her help. The Draconids understand the echo better than anyone. Hill's jaw tightened. The Draconid elder will remain in secure holding. She is not human, and her presence complicates an already delicate situation. She saved my life, Liam said firmly, and she is the reason I understand what the echo means. You cannot expect me to succeed without her guidance. I expect you to do whatever is necessary to prove that humanity can handle this situation without alien interference. Hill replied coldly. You have 1 week, Liam. Use it wisely. She left the medical wing, her footsteps echoing down the corridor. Rhodes gave Liam a sympathetic look but said nothing. They both knew the stakes had just become impossibly high. 1 week to convince Earth's government and the Galactic Council that humans with the Echo deserved protection instead of persecution. 1 week to turn 4 scared, confused people into proof that humanity was ready for its architect inheritance. Liam looked down at his hands, wondering if they were steady enough to carry the weight of an entire species' future. They arrived over the next 2 days, each one guarded like dangerous criminals. First came Sophie Liu, the teenager from Tokyo, barely 17 years old with fear written across her face. Then Dennis Okoye, the construction worker from New São Paulo, a massive man with gentle eyes who looked like he wanted to disappear. Finally, Grace Walsh arrived from Sydney, a retired teacher in her 60s who carried herself with quiet dignity, despite the armed escort. Liam met each of them in a common area the facility had set up for their interactions. The room was plain and sterile, with cameras in every corner recording everything. Director Hill made it clear that their conversations would be monitored constantly. Privacy was a luxury they could not afford. Sophie spoke first, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought I was going crazy. Since I was 6 years old, hearing voices that nobody else could hear. My parents put me on medication for years before I learned to pretend it stopped. I joined a construction crew that worked on Draconid embassy buildings, Dennis added, his accent thick. Started understanding the workers' conversations about their families, their homes, things they never said out loud. I kept my mouth shut because I needed the job. But hearing you on the news, knowing I was not alone, Grace smiled sadly. I taught elementary school for 40 years. Several of my students were Draconid children from diplomatic families. I could understand their struggles, their loneliness in a human school. I helped them adapt, but I always wondered why I was different. Now I know, and I wish I did not. Liam felt the weight of their shared experience settle over him. These were not dangerous anomalies or security threats. They were people who had spent their lives hiding a gift they did not ask for and could not explain. People like him. The Draconids call it the Echo, he explained, sharing everything Sirath had told him. We carry genetic sequences from an ancient race called the Architects. They created the Draconids and then disappeared 50,000 years ago. Somehow they hid their DNA in human evolution, and in rare cases it activates. That is what lets us understand Draconid speech and emotions. So we are what, experiments? Dennis asked bitterly. Test subjects from some ancient alien science project? We are their children, a new voice said. Everyone turned to see Dr. Rhodes entering the common area, carrying a portable display. I have been studying your genetic data, comparing it to the architect samples the Draconids provided. The sequences are not random insertions. They are carefully integrated into human DNA, designed to activate under specific conditions and produce specific results. He activated the display, showing complex genetic maps that meant nothing to most of them. But Liam found himself understanding the patterns, seeing connections that should have required years of study to comprehend. The Echo was helping him process the information. What kind of results? Grace asked. Enhanced cognitive abilities, increased emotional intelligence, and most importantly, the capacity to interface with architect technology, Rhodes explained. The architects did not just give humans the ability to understand Draconid speech. They gave you the potential to access their entire legacy. Every piece of technology they left behind, every structure, every data archive. It is all locked behind genetic keys that only echo carriers can open. Sophie's eyes widened. That is why the other species are afraid of us. They think we will use architect technology to dominate the galaxy. Some think that, Rhodes agreed. Others think you should be eliminated before you can become a threat. And a few believe you should be studied to unlock the secrets of architect genetics for their own species. He looked at each of them seriously. Director Hill gave you 1 week to prove you are not dangerous. But I think we need to prove something else entirely. We need to show that humans with the Echo are essential for galactic survival. How do we do that? Liam asked. Rhodes smiled grimly. By solving a problem that has stumped every species in the galaxy for 50,000 years. We figure out what happened to the architects and why they disappeared. The next days blurred together in intense study and experimentation. Rhodes brought them to a secure vault, where Earth's government had stored several architect artifacts recovered from ancient sites. Most were inert, dormant for millennia, their purposes unknown. Human scientists had been studying them for decades without success. But when Liam touched the first artifact, a crystalline sphere about the size of his head, something inside him responded. The echo resonated with frequencies embedded in the crystal, and suddenly he was not in the vault anymore. He was standing in a vast chamber filled with beings that looked almost human, but moved with perfect grace and purpose. The architects in their final days recording messages for whoever might someday understand. The others felt it too. Sophie gasped as memories that were not hers flooded her mind. Dennis gripped the table for support. Grace closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face as she experienced emotions 50,000 years old. Together, they translated what the architects had left behind. Not words but feelings, images, warnings. The architects had faced something called the silence, a wave of entropy that accelerated the heat death of the universe. It consumed stars, erased matter, and would eventually end all existence. The architects had tried to fight it, but their technology was insufficient. So they did something desperate. They transformed themselves, not into physical forms, but into information, encoding their consciousness into the DNA of their creations. The Draconids carried their memories and loyalty. Humans carried their potential for growth and adaptation. Other species scattered across the galaxy carried other fragments of what the architects had been. They are not gone, Sophie whispered, still caught in the vision. They are sleeping, waiting for their children to wake them up when the silence returns. And it is returning, Grace added, her voice heavy with dread. The artifacts are activating because the silence is getting closer. The architects designed us to respond to its presence, to trigger the awakening process before it is too late. Dennis looked at Dr. Rhodes with haunted eyes. How long do we have? Rhodes checked the data streaming from the artifacts, his face pale. Based on the energy signatures, maybe 5 years. 10 at the most. The silence is not moving quickly by cosmic standards, but it is definitely approaching this region of the galaxy. Liam felt the weight of understanding crash down on him. This was why the Echo existed, not to make humans special or powerful, but to prepare them for a threat that would destroy everything. The architects had not abandoned their creations. They had given them the tools to survive what was coming. We need to tell Director Hill, he said finally, and the Galactic Council. Every species in the galaxy needs to know what we just discovered. They will not believe you, a new voice said. Everyone spun around to find Director Hill herself standing in the vault entrance, her expression unreadable. I have been watching your session through the security feeds. I heard everything you said, and you are right. Most of the council will dismiss this as delusions or manipulation. But you believe us, Grace said. It was not a question. Hill moved into the vault, studying the still glowing artifacts. I believe the evidence. These objects have been dormant for decades, and suddenly they activate the moment echo carriers touch them. I believe that something made the architects desperate enough to embed their legacy in dozens of species across the galaxy. And I believe that if you are wrong, the worst case is we waste resources preparing for a threat that never comes. But if you are right and we do nothing, everyone dies, Dennis finished quietly. Hill nodded. I'm going to recommend to Earth's government that echo carriers be given protected status and full support for researching the architect legacy. But I need something from you in return. I need you to present your findings to the Galactic Council in 3 days. Stand before representatives from hundreds of worlds and convince them that humanity's echo carriers are not threats, but the galaxy's best hope for survival. 3 days is not enough time to prepare a presentation like that. Liam protested. It is all the time you have. Anti-human sentiment is growing across the galaxy. There have been attacks on human colonies, calls for Earth to be expelled from the Council, even suggestions that preemptive strikes might be necessary to contain the architect threat. Hill's expression hardened. The Council has agreed to one hearing where you can present evidence. One chance to change their minds. If you fail, Earth will have no choice but to withdraw from galactic society and prepare for isolation or war. What about Sirath? Liam asked. She knows more about the architects than any human. We need her help. The Elder has already been contacted. She will be allowed to accompany you to the Council chambers as your advocate. Hill moved toward the exit, then paused. The fate of humanity rests on what you say in 3 days. I suggest you make it count. After she left, the 4 echo carriers looked at each other with expressions mixing determination and terror. Sophie was 17 years old. Dennis was a construction worker. Grace was a retired teacher. And Liam was just a translator who had wanted nothing more than a quiet life. Now they had to save the galaxy. Where do we even start? Sophie asked, her voice small. Liam took a deep breath, feeling the echo resonating through him, connecting him to ancient purposes and future possibilities. We start by accepting what we are. Not accidents or anomalies, but exactly what the architects designed us to be. Bridges between the past and future, between species that cannot understand each other without help. He looked at the glowing artifacts, at the legacy of a race that had sacrificed everything to give their children a chance. We tell the Council the truth, that the architects did not disappear because they were weak. They disappeared because they loved what they created enough to become part of it. And if the galaxy wants to survive what is coming, we need to honor that sacrifice by working together. Grace smiled, some of the fear leaving her eyes. Well, when you put it that way, how can we fail? Easily, Dennis said with dark humor. But at least we failed trying to save everyone instead of hiding and pretending we are normal. They spent the next 3 days preparing, practicing, and learning to work together as the echo resonated between them. And somewhere deep in the facility, Sirath waited in her holding cell, feeling the same resonance, and knowing that everything was about to change. The Galactic Council chambers occupied an entire asteroid that had been hollowed out and transformed into the greatest meeting place in known space. Representatives from 347 species filled the amphitheater, their forms ranging from humanoid to completely alien. Some breathed oxygen, others methane, and a few existed as pure energy contained in special suits. But they all shared one thing in common today: suspicion of the 4 humans walking toward the central platform. Liam tried not to look at the hostile faces as he took his place beside Sophie. Dennis and Grace. Sirath stood with them, her massive form a comforting presence despite the angry murmurs her appearance caused. Director Hill sat in Earth's delegation box, her expression carefully neutral. Everything depended on the next hour. The council speaker, a crystalline being named Resonance who communicated through light patterns, called for order. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of translation devices working overtime to convert hundreds of languages simultaneously. The humans claimed to carry genetic material from the architects, Resonance announced, their light pulsing with each word. They claim this gives them special abilities and special knowledge about threats facing the galaxy. The Council will hear their evidence and determine if these claims have merit or if they represent a security risk that must be contained. Not exactly a warm welcome, but better than being arrested on sight. Liam stepped forward, fighting to keep his voice steady as he began. 3 months ago, I was just a translator working on Harmony's Edge station. I had spent my entire life hiding an ability I did not understand and could not explain. The ability to hear and comprehend Draconid speech without translators. I thought I was broken. I thought I was alone. He gestured to the others. But I was neither. Sophie, Dennis, and Grace share this ability. So do 17 other humans who have come forward since the news broke. And genetic testing suggests thousands more humans carry dormant sequences that could activate at any time. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several delegates made gestures that their species used to express discomfort or fear, but Liam continued. The Draconids call this ability the Echo. It is not magic or mutation. It is the result of genetic engineering performed 50,000 years ago by the architects. They embedded their DNA into multiple species across the galaxy, creating living archives of their knowledge and capabilities. A delegate from the insectoid hive-born species clicked their mandibles aggressively. You claim to speak for the architects? The most advanced civilization in galactic history chose humans as their heirs. Not heirs, Sirath interjected, her deep voice carrying easily across the chamber. Children, as the Draconids are also their children, as many of your species might be if you examined your own genetic histories closely enough. The architects did not choose favorites. They scattered their legacy across the galaxy, hoping that cooperation between their children would be enough to face what they could not. Face what? Resonance demanded. What threat could destroy a civilization as powerful as the architects? This was the critical moment. Liam nodded to Dr. Rhodes, who activated the holographic display they had prepared. The chamber filled with images from the architect artifacts, showing the wave of entropy that was slowly erasing the universe. They called it the silence, Grace explained, her teacher's voice carrying calm authority despite the terrifying images. It is not an enemy that can be fought or negotiated with. It is the acceleration of entropy, the heat death of the universe arriving millions of years too early. The architects discovered it, tried to stop it, and failed. So they did the only thing they could. They transformed themselves into information and hid inside their creations, waiting to be awakened when the silence returned. And it is returning, Sophie added, her young voice somehow more impactful than any of the adults. The artifacts we touched showed us the timeline. 5 years, maybe 10. Then the silence reaches this region of the galaxy and everything starts dying. Not destroyed, just emptied. Stars go dark, planets go cold, and eventually there is nothing left but dead matter drifting in the void. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted objections, demanded proof, accused the humans of fabricating threats to gain power. Some species representatives called for immediate military action against Earth. Others insisted the artifacts were deliberately manipulated to produce false visions. Through it all, Liam felt the echo resonating stronger than ever, not just from the humans present, but from somewhere beyond the chamber, from space itself. The architect structures scattered across the galaxy were responding to the awakening, singing in frequencies that only echo carriers could fully comprehend. You want proof? He shouted over the noise. Then let your scientists examine the artifacts. Let them measure the entropy levels in nearby systems. Let them check their astronomical records and see if stars have been going dark at rates faster than natural stellar death should allow. Or, Dennis said quietly, but somehow everyone heard him, you can keep arguing while the silence gets closer. And when your children ask why you did nothing to save them, you can explain that human genetics made you too afraid to cooperate. Resonance pulsed with agitation, their light flickering between colors that indicated deep uncertainty. What do you propose? Even if we accept your claims about the silence, what can we do that the architects could not? We wake them up, Liam said simply. The architects encoded themselves into DNA across hundreds of species. They are not gone, just dormant. If enough echo carriers from enough different species work together, we can activate the awakening protocols and bring their consciousness back. They will have the knowledge to fight the silence, but only if we stop seeing each other as threats and start seeing each other as family. You ask us to trust humans with the power to resurrect the architects? A delegate from the aquatic deep swimmers species gurgled through their translation unit. How do we know you will not use that power for conquest? Sirath stepped forward, her presence commanding attention. Because I have watched these humans. I have tested them. I have seen them sacrifice their own safety to warn others of danger. Liam could have remained hidden, safe, anonymous. Instead, he revealed himself to save my life. These 4 could have fled Earth, disappeared into the outer colonies where genetic testing is rare. Instead, they came here to warn you. She turned slowly, making eye contact with representatives from dozens of species. The Draconids were created to be warriors and guardians. For 50,000 years, we have waited for the architects to return, growing arrogant in our strength. But we cannot fight the silence with claws and fire. This threat requires what humans excel at: adaptation, cooperation, and the courage to change what they are to become what they must be. And if they fail? Resonance asked. If the awakening process does not work or makes things worse? Then we die together, Grace said softly, as we would have died anyway when the silence arrived. But at least we tried. At least we honored what the architects wanted from us, unity instead of division. The chamber fell silent as delegates conferred with their governments through quantum communication channels. Liam felt the weight of every eye, every sensor, every consciousness focused on the 4 humans who had accidentally become ambassadors for their entire species. Finally, after what felt like hours but was only minutes, resonance pulsed with a color pattern indicating formal decision. The Council votes to establish a joint research initiative. Human echo carriers will work alongside scientists and echo carriers from other species to investigate the architect artifacts and verify claims about the silence. If evidence supports the threat assessment, all Council resources will be directed toward awakening the architects and developing countermeasures. They paused, and their next pulse carried weight. However, all echo carriers, human and otherwise, must register with the Council and submit to monitoring, not as criminals but as vital resources that the galaxy cannot afford to lose or mismanage. Do you accept these terms? Liam looked at the others. Sophie nodded, her fear replaced by determination. Dennis shrugged with a slight smile. Grace squeezed his hand in support. They had not won complete freedom, but they had won recognition. They had won the chance to prove themselves. We accept, Liam said. The chamber erupted again, but this time with negotiation and planning rather than fear and anger. Species began forming research coalitions, offering facilities and resources for studying the artifacts. The Draconids pledged their knowledge and protection for all echo carriers. Even the Hiveborn, so hostile earlier, agreed to share data from their astronomical surveys. Director Hill caught Liam's eye from the delegation box and nodded once. It was the closest she would come to congratulating him, but it was enough. Over the following months, echo carriers emerged from dozens of species. Some had been hiding like Liam, afraid of persecution. Others had never realized their abilities were connected to the architects until testing confirmed genetic markers. A deep swimmer child who could hear songs in architect crystal resonance, an elderly hiveborn who understood mathematical patterns embedded in ancient structures, a Draconid youth whose scales changed color in response to artifact activation. They gathered on a newly built research station, orbiting an architect structure the size of a small moon. Hundreds of scientists and echo carriers working together, sharing knowledge, learning to harmonize their abilities, and slowly, carefully, they began waking up the sleeping consciousness hidden in their DNA. Liam stood at an observation window 5 years after his testimony to the Council. Watching teams work on the massive structure, Sophie had become a leading researcher despite her youth. Dennis coordinated construction efforts with other species workers, his natural ability to understand people making him invaluable. Grace taught new echo carriers how to manage the overwhelming information flow without losing themselves. And Cirith had become his closest friend, a bond between species that would have seemed impossible just years before. The silence will be here within months, she said, joining him at the window. Can you feel it? The artifacts are screaming warnings now. I can feel it, Liam confirmed. But I can also feel something else. The architect's stirring, not fully awake yet, but close. We are close. Will it be enough? It has to be, Liam said quietly. Because the alternative is unacceptable. Below them, the artifact pulsed with light as another activation sequence completed. Inside it, encoded in quantum states that defied conventional physics, the memories and knowledge of an entire civilization waited to guide their children through the darkness ahead. The human boy who could talk to dragons had become something more than he ever imagined. Not a hero or a savior, but a bridge. Between species who had forgotten how to trust each other. Between the present and a past that refused to stay buried. Between the galaxy as it was and what it needed to become to survive. And when the silence finally arrived, drawn by the resonance of awakening consciousness, it would find not a scattered collection of species too afraid to work together, but a unified force of architect children ready to defend what their parents had given them, not with weapons or violence, but with something the silence could never understand or overcome. The determination to protect each other, whatever the cost.